The first-class cabin of Flight 447 to Vienna hummed with the quiet luxury of expensive leather and champagne flutes. Margaret Chen settled into seat 2A, her weathered hands carefully arranging a worn music folder on her lap. At 63, she wore a simple navy cardigan over a floral dress, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, the kind that came from sleepless nights at hospital bedsides, not glamorous late nights. Across the aisle in 2B, Trevor Blackstone barely glanced up from his platinum phone. The tech mogul, whose face graced the covers of business magazines monthly, was scrolling through his stock portfolio with the practiced indifference of someone for whom money had lost all meaning. His suit probably cost more than Margaret's monthly rent. As Margaret reached up to place her small carry-on in the overhead bin, her folder slipped, scattering yellowed sheet music across the pristine carpet. "Careful there," Trevor said, his voice dripping with condescension as he watched her kneel to gather the papers. "Maybe economy would be more appropriate. I'm sure there's been some mistake with your ticket." Margaret looked up, meeting his eyes with quiet dignity. "No mistake. This is my seat." Trevor's laugh was sharp and cruel. "Right. And I suppose you bought it with what, your life savings?" He made no move to help as she collected her scattered sheets, some of them original compositions she'd written decades ago. A flight attendant approached, her smile professionally neutral. "Is everything all right here?" "Just wondering how someone like her ended up in first class," Trevor said, gesturing dismissively at Margaret. "No offense, but this section has certain standards." The attendant's smile tightened. Can I help you with your belongings?" "I've got it, thank you," Margaret said softly, finally gathering the last sheet. Her hands trembled slightly, not from his words, but from exhaustion. She'd been up for 36 hours straight. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Trevor made increasingly pointed comments. When Margaret ordered just water instead of champagne, he smirked. "Trying to blend in. Everyone knows first class is wasted on people who don't appreciate it." Margaret said nothing, closing her eyes as the plane lifted off. In her mind, she could hear the violins from last night, the emergency rehearsal that had run until 4 a.m. The strings had been all wrong in the second movement, and she'd made them practice it 17 times until it sang. 3 hours into the flight, Margaret finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, her head resting against the window. She dreamed of concert halls and standing ovations, of the life she'd built note by painstaking note. She was jolted awake by the captain's voice, unusually urgent over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical emergency. If there is a doctor on board, please identify yourself immediately." Margaret's eyes snapped open. From economy class, she could hear rising panic, a child's scream, a mother's frantic voice. Trevor remained glued to his phone, scrolling past charity requests and news alerts with equal disinterest. The captain's voice came again, even more strained. "We have a 7-year-old passenger in severe respiratory distress. We are 40 minutes from any possible landing. If anyone has medical training of any kind, please come forward now." Margaret was already unbuckling her seatbelt. "Where do you think you're going?" Trevor asked, barely looking up. She ignored him, moving quickly down the aisle. In row 23, a small Asian boy was gasping for air, his lips turning blue. His mother clutched him, tears streaming down her face. Please, someone help him. His inhaler isn't working." The flight attendants looked helpless, their basic first aid training insufficient for this crisis. Margaret knelt beside the boy, her exhaustion falling away as decades of training took over. "I'm Dr. Chen," she said calmly to the mother. "Pediatric emergency medicine." "How long has he been like this?" The captain's voice crackled again. "Dr. Margaret Chen, if you are on this flight, please identify yourself to crew immediately. Repeat, Dr. Margaret Chen." Trevor, who had wandered back to watch the commotion, froze. Margaret didn't respond to the intercom. She was too focused on the child, assessing his symptoms with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent 40 years saving lives. "Severe bronchospasm. The inhaler's not enough. I need the emergency medical kit. There should be epinephrine." A flight attendant rushed to retrieve it. "You're a doctor." Trevor's voice cracked with disbelief. Margaret still didn't look at him, carefully preparing the injection. "Hold him steady," she instructed the mother. "This will help immediately, sweetheart. she told the boy gently. You're going to be okay. The injection was swift and precise. Within 90 seconds, the child's breathing began to ease. Color returned to his face. His mother sobbed with relief, gripping Margaret's hand like a lifeline. The captain's voice returned, now filled with relief. Dr. Chen, we have Vienna General Hospital on emergency relay. They're confirming you're scheduled to lead the International Pediatric Conference there tomorrow. Thank God you're on this flight. Margaret was checking the boy's pulse, murmuring reassurances. Breathe slowly, that's it. Good boy. Trevor stood frozen in the aisle, his face cycling through shades of red and white. Passengers around him had begun to whisper, looking between him and Margaret with dawning recognition. Wait, someone said, pulling out their phone. Dr. Margaret Chen? She's the Dr. Chen. She developed the Chen protocol for pediatric asthma treatment. My daughter's alive because of her research. Another passenger chimed in. She won the Global Medicine Award last year. I saw it on the news. Trevor's expensive loafers seemed rooted to the economy class carpet as the truth crashed over him. The woman he'd mocked, whose presence in first class he'd questioned, was one of the most respected pediatric doctors in the world. I didn't. He stammered. Margaret finally glanced up at him, her expression not angry but infinitely weary. You didn't ask, she said simply, returning her attention to her patient. The boy was breathing normally now, nestled against his mother. Margaret stayed with them for the remaining flight, monitoring his vitals, teaching the mother what to watch for, her gentle competence a stark contrast to Trevor's earlier cruelty. When they landed in Vienna, paramedics boarded immediately. As they carefully transported the boy off the plane, the mother turned to Margaret with tears streaming down her face. You saved my son's life. How can I ever thank you? Just make sure he sees his pulmonologist next week, Margaret said, squeezing her hand. And carry a backup inhaler. Always. The passengers applauded as Margaret made her way off the plane, many stopping to thank her, to shake her hand. Trevor tried to approach her at the gate. Dr. Chen, I owe you an apology. I was completely out of line. What I said was revealing, Margaret finished quietly. You revealed exactly who you are, Mr. Blackstone. You saw someone you deemed beneath you and treated them accordingly. She adjusted her worn folder of sheet music, not sheet music at all, Trevor now realized, but medical journals and research papers. The emergency that brought me on this flight was a call about a child's life. I hadn't slept in a day and a half. I upgraded my ticket because I needed a few hours of rest before the conference where I'll be presenting research that could help thousands of children. Trevor's face burned with shame. But you couldn't see past your assumptions, Margaret continued. You saw my clothes, my age, my skin color, and decided I didn't belong. That tells me everything about your character and nothing about mine. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Mr. Blackstone, that conference I'm heading to, it's funded by donations from people who believe in using their wealth for good. Perhaps you might consider what you're using yours for. Trevor stood in the terminal long after she'd gone, watching her disappear into the crowd, this small, tired woman in her modest dress, carrying the weight of countless saved lives on her shoulders. He pulled out his phone and, for the first time in years, ignored his stock portfolio. Instead, he searched for the Chen protocol, reading story after story of children whose lives had been transformed by her research, her dedication, her brilliance. His first-class ticket stub felt like ash in his pocket. 3 months later, a substantial anonymous donation appeared in Dr. Chen's research fund, enough to expand her clinical trials across 12 countries. The memo simply read, in hope of learning to see what truly matters. A reformed passenger. Margaret saw the donation and smiled slightly, though she'd never know for certain who sent it. She was too busy with her latest patient, a 6-year-old whose parents had been told there was no hope. Margaret had heard that before. She'd spent her entire career proving that where there was breath, there was hope, and she'd never needed first-class accommodations to prove her worth.
Hello everyone. If you are enjoying this video and finding it helpful, don't forget to support our channel. Please subscribe to our channel, press the like button, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. We regularly upload amazing, informative, and entertaining content just for you. Your support means a lot to us and motivates us to bring even better content in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and welcome to our growing community.